lovely people. Let me check quickly. Is the microphone on and working? Hello, hello, test, test, test. Okay, hello everyone. Hello, lovely people. How are you all today? Hello. I'm doing well. I hope you're all doing well. I'm very excited for today's stream, starting another new person. A new creator on the channel, featuring a new creator. And we'll hopefully not go through all of their work this stream, because I don't want to run out of work to read from them, but it's what it is. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of tired and I need to think. I don't know why I'm always so tired, but I'm excited for today's stream and I hope you guys are too. When are we going to hear from my next queen? I'm still not sure. I have a lot of writing I need to do and I'm a little just hung up doing other things, but I hope to release the next queen sometime soon. Whether that's a past queen or a future queen or something in the middle. You know, I hope to release something in the near future, but I make no promises because I'm a busy person. But okay. Without further ado, I say let's just dive right in. Just a minute. We do not have, and also we do not have tapestries or little poems things for all of the queens today. They are not all finished. You will have to continue to check the links, both DeviantArt, Archive of Your Own, and other things for the updates to see when and if they eventually do get tapestries and such. But we do not have them for all of these today. Okay, let's transition. Oh yeah, a writing stream would be lots of nice. A writing stream, I mean, would be nice to do. Okay, there we go. Let's see, is this working with me? Okay, so today we are going to be reading stories from Shinkai14 on DeviantArt, Archive of Your Own, and other websites like I'm pretty sure Twitter and Toy House. And remember, everyone, please forgive me if I stutter, hesitate, or mispronounce anything, and for any noises in the background. Yeah, don't worry about it. I understand poems are really hard to do, and also just take your time with everything. I know my poems aren't the best because I really rush to get them done, and sometimes that's what I like focus on. Okay, first slide. Chara Butterfly, the first butterfly. And Tumblr? Oh, okay. The sea of magic she did sail. For her people she wouldn't fail. She brought about the end of the war as she soared into the sky, thus creating the kingdom of butterfly. Trigger warnings for this biography. Contains methods of death, killing, and war, and as the author's note says, do not replicate anything the characters do in this. Chara Butterfly, the first butterfly. Born 21 BM, died 37 AM. Reigned from 1 BM to 21 AM. Married to Roderick Smith. Children Luna Butterfly, Annalise Butterfly, and Rowan Butterfly. Though not much is known about Chara's life before her and the other settlers arrived in what we now know as Muni, we do know a few things. She was the oldest of 3 and her birth name was Charine Cromwell. Sorry, I can't pronounce that. She was born in England to a wealthy family. Due to her being the oldest of her siblings and the heir to the family, she was arranged to marry another noble when she turned 18. Though Charine didn't care for the man her parents chose for her, so near her 14th birthday, Chara and some of her friends and servants snuck into a large ship that was on a trade route. The group were eventually discovered, but by the time that ship was already out in the middle of the ocean. Whilst the crew of the ship were discussing what their next course of action should be, a large yellow whirlpool appeared and dug the ship and the ones near it down. Somehow, just before falling into a portal leading out of the realm of magic, Charine and a few others swiped a small wooden boat from the ship and floated along until they made it to shore and met Glossric, and after he played a quick game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, he gave Charine a rattle, and after placing a young mill horse inside it, upon taking the rattle into her hand, the rattle turned into a wand, changing its appearance. Alongside the wand, Charine gained pink circles on each cheek. That same year, after more settlers had shown up, Chara had begun to lead the group of settlers, which was now a village of over 200. However, a few months in, monsters attacked, leaving many injured, and people only avoided casualties thanks to Chara's quick intervention by blasting the small band of monsters away with her wand. Charine had started going by Chara, as that was a nickname for her and was the only thing she remembered from her previous life. The settlers had begun to rely on Chara for protection as the monster attacks became more frequent as the settlers expanded their village. The first major battle occurred in the early summer of 6 a.m. when Chara, who was still training her magic after having the wand for a few months at that point, had heard of a nearby village of settlers. At that point, sorry, I blanked out. I don't know what just happened. Having the wand for a few months at that point, as she heard a nearby village of settlers that had been under attack by the monsters. As soon as she was able, Chara gathered as many of her allies she had already had and rushed to the village, only to the most of the buildings were in ruin. As the fight raged on, Chara saw a young man less than a year older than her slay a monster who was almost 5 feet taller than him. Once Chara and the others had dispatched the monsters, the young man introduced himself as Roderick Smith. It wasn't much of a surprise that Roderick had caught Chara's eye, as he was rather tall for a 15-year-old, on top of his dark blue hair and eyes that reminded her of the night sky. Seeing that there was safety in numbers, Chara and Roderick, who was the leader of a village that was attacked, decided to merge their villages. Over the next few months, they managed to make contact with other villages started by other settlers. After a long discussion between the various leaders and them putting the final decision up, they decided Chara. They decided their growing village should be called Muni. Alongside that, they decided to call themselves Mumins due to the reminding them of their past they'd long since almost entirely forgotten. In the midsummer of the next year, a band of monsters attacked the village, with a tall Septarian leading the charge. As the battle raged on, many buildings were destroyed and many Mumins and monsters lost their lives. Despite his regeneration, Chara managed to force the monsters back. It took a year for the Mumins to rebuild, and in the summer of 4 a.m., while finishing up the rebuilding, Chara confided in a girl whom she'd befriended over the past year, who was named Laura Rednold, about how Chara had started to develop feelings for Roderick. After a pep talk, Laura managed to convince Chara to confess her feelings to Roderick, and much to Chara's surprise, he reciprocated them. Despite the small battles that occurred over the year, it was rather incorrect to say that Chara was calm. It was the exact opposite. As a matter of fact, she was on edge and overly cautious, so much so she pushed herself even harder in her training. The next major event occurred in 2 a.m., when the monsters stormed the village that was now a small growing kingdom. The monsters destroyed most everything in their path, and seeing the destruction from the window of her tower, Chara was consumed with a blinding light and emerged in a butterfly form similar in appearance to the ones the future princesses took when puberty would happen. Unlike future princesses' puberty forms, Chara had almost complete control over her actions and used her powers to get rid of the attacking monsters. However, after this was done, Chara turned back to her normal self and started falling, but luckily for her, Roderick caught her before she could hit the ground. The most important battle occurred the following year, when Chara received a letter from Seth, the Septarian who led the monsters, while she began working on what would become of the Book of Spells. The letter informed her that if her people didn't leave Muni by dawn the next day, they were going to be severe consequences. Instead of fleeing as it was suggested, Chara rallied her army and used what she'd been constantly training tirelessly for since she received the wand to turn the soldiers into fearsome warriors. Chara and Roderick noticed that the monster army were camping nearby, so in the dead of the night, the Mumin army led by Chara and Roderick charged into battle. When it seemed like the monsters were lose, Seth, who had taken a spear from a fallen Mumin soldier, was about to kill Roderick, who had been knocked to the ground. When Chara showed this, her emotion and magic overflowed, and whilst engulfed in blinding light, she soared into the sky. With the sun starting to rise behind her, she emerged into her butterfly form once again. Chara raised her wand above her head and cast a spell that decimated the monster camp. The remaining monsters fled into the forest. The Mumins immediately began to celebrate their victory and triumphantly marched back to their kingdom. Upon arrival, Chara was lifted into a makeshift stage by Roderick. After she turned to face the crowd, they began chanting, "All hail Queen Butterfly!" As the cheers quieted down enough, Roderick hopped onto the stage and took Chara's hands into his and asked for her hand in marriage, calling her, "My darling monarch Butterfly." After this, Chara decided to take the surname Butterfly for herself and her descendants. The marriage of Chara Butterfly and Roderick Smith took place in the winter of 1 BM, as soon as Chara discovered that she was pregnant with her first child. Chara's pregnancy wasn't entirely restful, as she knew that Seth was still alive. While practicing magic, Chara created a crystal that was meant to tell if there was something special about any heirs in their butterfly family. In the late summer of 1 AM at midnight, while the moon and stars were shining their brightest in the sky, Chara gave birth to her first child and heir, a girl who was named Luna. Luna had her father's dark blue hair and her eyes, as well as dark blue on upward pointed crescent moons on her cheeks. Chara saw the crystal that she'd made and turned a dark blue color, as well as showing an image of a midnight sky on its face. After discussing this with her ministers, and the MHC decided on the titles that was for what would be known as this day the cycle of queens: midnight, sunrise, and sunset, as well as the term era queen for the queens who were open a new era. Chara spent the majority of the following year helping her people expand their kingdom, as well as constructing a wall around the kingdom. At the behest of Loria and Roderick, Chara agreed to allow the tower they lived in to be converted into a residence befitting of a royal family. In the late fall of the same year, Chara discovered she was pregnant with her second child, and in the spring of 3 AM, Chara gave birth to her second daughter. A girl had Chara's brown hair and Roderick's eyes, as well as light green butterflies on her cheeks. The baby was named Annalise. Chara would have her third and final child and only son the following year in 4 AM. The boy was named Rowan. Rowan was born without cheek marks, which caused Chara and Roderick to assume that cheek marks were exclusive to girls. Chara decided that the heir to the butterfly throne would be given the wand and book of spells on their 14th birthday, as she was 14 when she came to the Muni and received the wand. In 10 AM, Chara noticed that out of all her noble children, Luna was the closest with the oldest children of the Larson family, Amalsa, and her brother Garrett. Some ministers suggested that she arrange the marriage for her daughter, but Chara refused by saying she would rather have her daughter marry for love and not for obligation. In 15 AM, Chara passed the wand to Luna, which changed appearance to suit Luna. Chara would deal with one final monster attack in 17 AM, which sadly resulted in the death of Roderick. Chara would finally pass the throne to Luna in 21 AM and witness her and Garrett's marriage a year later. In the fall of 23 AM, Chara's first grandchild was born, a girl named Strella, who had Garrett's hair and Luna's eyes, as well as light blue inverted clubs on her cheeks. Chara would live to see the birth of Luna's last two daughters, Lyra and Letta, in 25 AM and 27 AM respectively, as well as her granddaughter Strella inherit the wand in 37. A month after Strella inherited the wand, Chara passed away of natural causes and was buried in the newly built crypts. And that was the first biography by Shinkai14 on Archive of Your Own. And if you go into my Discord, you will see the links for all of these stories. Just a minute, we're having some stream problems. Let me see if I can fix whatever is happening. Just a second, everyone. And sorry if there's any lag or anything, everyone. I really thought I had fixed the problem, but it seems we have not, and there's still some errors. That's unfortunate. Okay. Let me see, we're doing this. Slow down? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you guys, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Let me see if I can fix this. It's fine, don't worry about grammar mistakes. Okay, let's continue on. Luna Butterfly, the Midnight Queen. Born 1 a.m., died 57 a.m. Reigned 21 a.m. to 44 a.m. Married to Garrett Larson. Children, Strella Butterfly, Lyra Butterfly, and Letta Butterfly. Yeah, let me drink some water quickly. Okay, let me try to slow down, not read so fast. Okay. Princess Luna was born to Queen Chara Butterfly and her husband Roderick Smith in 1 a.m., being the first official princess of Muni. Luna was born with her father's dark blue hair and eyes, as well as the upward pointed crescent moons on the same color. Luna would gain a younger sister who was named Annalise in 3 a.m., who had her mother's hair color and the dad's eyes, along with light green butterflies on her cheeks. Luna's final siblings would be born in 4 a.m., the boy Rowan. He was born with the hair and eyes of their mother. The same year, it was decided that Luna would inherit the wand her mother possessed when she turned 14. Luna, however, was unaware of this fact due to her young age. In 6 a.m., Luna, who was 5 at the time, had finally started to be brought to council meetings and began socializing with other noble children. It was during one of those meetings where she met Amelisa and Garrett Larson. Amelisa was a year older than Luna and had light aquamarine hair and brown eyes. Garrett was the same age as Luna and had medium aquamarine hair and brown eyes. For years, the nobles would pressure Luna's mother, Chara, to try and get the queen to arrange a marriage for her heiress when she turned 18 or 19, though the queen always stood firm in rejecting the idea of arranged marriages for any of her children. The princess was mostly kept in the dark about this, though, through the years, so she wouldn't feel obligated or forced to marry anyone. In 14 a.m., Luna, alongside Amelisa, Garrett, and the others and Roland, snuck out of the kingdom to explore the surrounding area, partially not believing the tales of the monster army and the rumors of the Septarian Seth still being alive. They thought they'd be safe, but less than an hour after they first set foot beyond the walls of the kingdom, they were surrounded by a band of monsters, the princess of the Butterfly Kingdom, due to her cheek marks. The group were only saved by the timely arrival of the queen, Chara, and a band of soldiers. It was an understatement to say that the queen was upset with her daughter. Some of the other nobles even suggested that the queen should give the wand and the throne to her other daughter, though the queen, having even entertained the idea of it, are nothing more than rumors. It is truth that the queen reprimanded the nobles who suggested such a thing, saying, "An heir's right to rule should not be judged by one simple act of curiosity." Despite Luna being touched by her mother defending her, the princess swore that she would not go past the castle walls until she had sufficient training with magic. The following year, in 15 a.m., Luna was given the wand, which had morphed into having a silver handle and a blue ribbon near the top, as well as a crescent moon-shaped crystal on top. In 16 a.m., Luna officially announced that she had begun dating Garrett, though this happiness would be shattered the following year when, during a monster attack, her father Roderick was killed. The princess mourned her father and wore only black clothes for most of the time until her mother passed the throne to her in 21 a.m. The following year, she and Garrett got married, and shortly after the beginning of the following year, Luna discovered that she was expecting her first child. And in the fall of 23 a.m., Queen Luna gave birth to her first daughter, who was born with her father's hair and mother's eyes, along with light blue inverted clubs on her cheeks. The newborn princess was named Strella. The queen was overjoyed with the birth of her granddaughter. Luna would birth her daughter. Luna would birth another daughter named Lyra in 25 a.m. Lyra was practically dark green upward pointed crescent moons on her cheeks. After a conversation with Emelisa in 26 a.m., Luna decided to use her magic to allow any of her descendants, regardless of gender or whomever, that they would be able to have children. In 27 a.m., Luna gave birth to her last daughter, Lydia, who had Luna's hair and Gorette's eyes as well as dark pink clouds on her cheeks. Luna began a project that would be finished by her daughter years later to make the kingdom larger the same year. In 37 a.m., Luna continued the wand passing tradition by giving her oldest daughter, Strella, the royal magic butterfly wand. Though sadly the following month, Queen Mother Chara Butterfly passed away. It was noted that the queen had locked herself in her room and after the funeral and refused to leave until the following week. At 38 a.m., Luna was informed by her daughter Strella that she was in a relationship with a noble lady named Amelia Rose, the daughter of Luna's friend Flora. The same year, the queen allowed her daughter Strella to take over the building project, which wouldn't be completed until a few years later. In 44 a.m., Luna would finally pass the throne to Strella after the project was completed and Strella's marriage to Amelia. Despite what many assumed, the now Queen Strella would not produce an heir until 51 a.m., which in the spring of that year, Luna's only granddaughter, Azalea, was born, being similar to Amelia in appearance. Luna also saw the birth of both Strella's sons, Basil and Ash Butterfly, in 53 a.m., as well as her daughter make peace with the Lucitors in 55 a.m. before passing away in 57 a.m. And that was the biography of Luna, the Midnight Queen. Next side. Strella the Builder. Strella Butterfly, the Builder. Born 23 a.m., died 81 a.m., reigned 44 a.m. to 71 a.m., married to Amelia Roses. Children, Azalea Butterfly, Basil Butterfly, and Ash Butterfly. Princess Strella was born to Queen Luna Butterfly and her husband Gorette Larson in 23 a.m. Strella was born with her father's hair and a mother's eyes, along with light blue inverted clubs on her cheeks. Strella gained two younger sisters, Lyra in 25 a.m. and Lydia in 27 a.m. Princess Strella had a passion for building things from a young age and was extremely interested in the project her mother had started. Princess Strella was a rather chaotic child. The princess often broke things or looked for broken things so that she could fix them. If the princess was unable to find anything, Strella would gather anything she could find and would build various things. Princess Strella became friends with the daughter of her mother's friend Flora Roses. Amelia Roses was the oldest of 5. It was an understatement to say that the two were inseparable as partners in crime. One major instance of this was in 37 a.m. Just as guests were arriving for the princess's birthday and wand passing ceremony, Strella and Amelia snuck out of the princess's bedroom and onto the balconies overlooking the gardens to attempt to get a peek at the decorations and cake early. Not even a few minutes after stepping foot onto the balcony, the princess decided to attempt to impress her friend by standing on the up on the balcony railing and attempting to walk across it. Princess Strella soon lost her footing and fell, but was luckily saved by the timely arrival of her father, who within an instant managed to grab her and pull her back up onto the balcony, after which he frantically made sure she was all right before scolding her for doing something so dangerous. Luckily, the rest of the day went off without a hitch, much to the relief of the king and queen. The excitement the princess felt about finally inheriting her family heirloom wouldn't last long, as only a month after Strella's grandmother Chara would pass away. The following year, in 38 a.m., Strella began a relationship with Amelia, which she wouldn't inform her parents of until that year. It was also in this year that Strella would be given control over the building project her mother was working on, the princess stating that she would not become queen until the project was completed. Finally, after 6 years and 44 a.m., Strella finished the project, though many questioned why she didn't use her magic to finish the project sooner, to which Strella only replied, If I rely solely on magic to get hard work done, then what was I supposed to do when I no longer have it? As expected, shortly after the project was finished, Strella and Amelia wed, and Queen Luna passed the throne to her daughter. Though much to everyone's surprise, the now Queen Strella wouldn't produce an heir until 7 years into her reign in 51 AM, when Luna and Amelia had their only daughter, Azalea Butterfly, who looked more like Amelia. 2 years later, Strella and Amelia had 2 more children, Basil and Ash Butterfly. Basil had Amelia's hair and Strella's eyes, while Ash was the opposite. Over the following years, there was a thankfully zero fatality conflict with the Lucitors, and luckily the Queen made peace with the Lucitors in 55 AM, before anything serious could happen. 2 years after, in 57 AM, Queen Mother Luna Butterfly would pass away. It was noted that the Queen was devastated at the loss of her mother, though she was grateful for the support of Amelia and her children. In 65 AM, Queen Strella passed the wand to her daughter. Later that same year, Strella was informed of Azalea's relationship with a noble named Baxter Reeds. Strella would stay queen for another 6 years, after which in 71 AM, she'd pass the throne to Azalea. The coronation was first to be held somewhere other than the throne room. It was instead held in the gardens at the request of Azalea herself. The coronation was followed soon after by Azalea's marriage to Baxter and the birth of the heiress Princess Lyre in the spring of 72 AM. Over the course of the following 9 years, Strella would gain 3 more granddaughters from Azalea, Cadence Butterfly in 73 AM, Flora Butterfly in 75 AM, and finally Luna Butterfly in 77 AM. Strella and Amelia would spend the rest of their days until Strella passed away in 81 AM and were buried in the crypts next to her mother and grandmother. And that was the biography of Strella the Builder. Now on to Azalea the Gardener. Azalea Butterfly, the Gardener. Birth 51 AM, death 1:19 AM. Reign 71 AM to 93 AM. Married to Baxter Reeds. Children, Lyra Butterfly, Cadence Butterfly, Flora Butterfly, and Luna Butterfly. Princess Strella was born to Queen Strella. Princess Azalea was born to Queen Strella Butterfly and her wife Amelia Roses in 51 AM, 7 years into her mother's reign. Azalea had been born as almost a spitting image of her mother Amelia, as well as having red rose cheek marks. Azalea wasn't an only child for a very long, as 2 years later in 53 AM, Azalea gained 2 younger brothers, Basil and Ash Butterfly. Basil had Amelia's hair and Strella's eyes, while Ash was the opposite. Over the following years, the princess and her brothers never left the walls of the castle, as the conflict, though not as dangerous as the one Queen Chara Butterfly had fought in, was still deemed too dangerous to allow the princess and her brothers outside in fear that they may get hurt. Though in 55 AM, Queen Strella made peace with the Lucitors before the conflict would escalate to becoming a real danger. 2 years after, in 57 AM, Azalea's grandmother Luna Butterfly would pass away. Though the young princess was saddened at the loss, it hurt the princess more to see how devastated her mother, Queen Strella, was. In 60 AM, Azalea met a noble boy with brown hair and eyes named Baxter Reeds during a party that was held at the Butterfly Castle. It was noted that the princess and Baxter became friends rather quickly due to their shared interest in gardening and preferred not to be in large crowds. 5 years later, Azalea was finally given the royal magic wand on her birthday. Later that same year, Azalea informed her mother, Strella, of her recent relationship with Baxter Reeds. Most of the time, Azalea and Baxter's time, when Azalea wasn't busy with the wand training, was spent hanging out in the gardens of Butterfly Castle and the rest in the castle library. It was an understatement to say that Azalea's life prior to becoming queen was rather uneventful, aside from her being the first princess to be evaluated by Baby. Baby was rumored to have been a secret creation of the first Queen of Muni. On the contrary to what the future queens Moon the Undaunted and Star the Underestimated believe, Baby doesn't evaluate all the heirs and heiresses of Muni. In 71 AM, Azalea became Queen of Muni. The coronation was first to be held somewhere other than the throne room. It was instead held in the gardens of the Butterfly Castle at the request of Azalea herself. The coronation was followed soon after by Azalea's marriage to Baxter. Soon after, Azalea became pregnant, and in the spring of 72 AM, Azalea gave birth to her heiress, Princess Lyre Butterfly. Lyre was born very similar to her father. Lyre had light pink beamed notes on her cheeks. And the next year, in 73 AM, Azalea gave birth to her second child, a girl with red hair and brown eyes and dark blue circle outlines on her cheeks. The girl was named Cadence Butterfly. In 73 AM, Azalea made an alliance with the Zenith Kingdom. A few years later, in 75 AM, Azalea gave birth to her third child, a girl who was born with brown hair and red eyes, as well as green tulips on her cheeks, and she was named Flora Butterfly. And finally, 2 years later, in 77 AM, Azalea gave birth to her fourth and final child, Luna Butterfly. Luna had the same dark blue hair as her namesake, though she was born with brown eyes and teal bells on her cheeks. Azalea's reign was rather peaceful, aside from the occasional disagreement with some of the members of the Magical High Commission, particularly with Herda, who should be noted was a manipulative gossiper who enjoyed stirring up drama. Azalea often asked for advice from her mother Strella in regards to matters related to being queen. Sadly, in 81 AM, Strella Butterfly would pass away. The queen would spend the rest of the year mourning, almost exclusively wearing black. A few years later, in 86 AM, Azalea passed the wand to her daughter Lyre. The wand surprisingly changed shape dramatically, taking the form of a lyre. Azalea would remain queen until her daughter Lyre would return from her continental musical tour in 93 AM. Not only did Lyre return with knowledge of the other kingdoms on the continent, but also returned with a man named Alphonse Vida, a minor noble from the Zenith Kingdom who was the same age as Lyre, and he was her fiancé. Shortly following the coronation of Lyre was the wedding of Lyre and Alphonse. In 95 AM, Azalea's first grandchild was born, but much to the surprise of the entire family and kingdom, Queen Lyre Butterfly's firstborn was a son with orange apples on his cheeks, and he was named Rigel. This raised the question of how the line of succession would go, as since the first queen was the firstborn had always been a daughter. The discussion of the line of succession would persist until 98 AM, when Lyre would announce after an undisclosed discussion with Azalea and the MHC that daughters would take the precedence in the line of succession over sons, meaning that after this declaration for the next few years, the heir of the throne was actually Lyre's younger sister Cadence. However, in the winter of 100 AM, Lyre became pregnant in the summer of 101, and Azalea gained a granddaughter from Lyre. The newborn girl was named Iona Butterfly. In 7:12 AM, Azalea was present at the first Silver Bell Ball and saw her granddaughter Iona make friends with a noble boy who was her age. The boy's name was Callahan or Rodney. Callahan had only attended the ball because of his parents dragging him along. In 1:15 AM, Azalea saw her granddaughter inherit the wand before a few nobles who were against Iona being the heir instead of her older brother attempted to storm in and stop the ceremony, though said nobles were quickly apprehended. Azalea would live to see her grandson Rigel get married that same year and in the first ever Song Day festival a few months after, and also see her granddaughter Iona become queen in 1:19 AM before she'd pass away and be buried in the crypts of the Butterfly Castle. And that was Azalea the Gardener. Next is Lyre the Musical. Lyre the Musical, born 72 AM, died 1:37 AM. Reign was 93 AM to 1:19 AM. Married to Alphonse Vida. Children, Rigel Butterfly and Iona Butterfly. Princess Lyre was born to Queen Azalea Butterfly and her husband Baxter Reeds in 72 AM, with pink beamed notes on her cheeks. Lyre had no memory of being an only child, as only a year after her birth she gained a younger sister, Cadence Butterfly. A few years later, when Lyre was 3 years old in 75 AM, Lyre gained another sister named Flora. By the time Lyre turned 5 in 77 AM, she gained one final sister named Luna. Princess Lyre was a relatively quiet girl who always avoided conflict when possible, particularly with the members of the Magical High Commission named Herta, who was, as mentioned in the biography of Lyre's mother, known to be a manipulative gossiper who enjoyed stirring up drama. Herta was to reason for Lyre, dreading accompanying her mother to meetings. Princess Lyre's grandmother, Queen Mother Strella Butterfly, would die in 81 AM. Princess Lyre had an interest in music since she was very young. She even received her first and most favorite instrument, a lyre, from her uncle Ash in 84 AM for her 12th birthday. It was also noted the princess was almost never seen without the lyre she'd been gifted, and that she practiced and played it multiple times almost every day. 2 years later, in 86 AM, Lyre would inherit the royal magic wand. Lyre's wand was the first one in history of the butterfly lineage to have its form changed drastically, with it taking the form of a lyre. It was around this time that the princess began to wish to explore the continent, performing anywhere she could. The alliances and good relations with the other kingdoms on the continent was just a bonus in the princess's mind. It would take the princess until early 87 AM to finally manage to convince her mother, Queen Azalea, to allow her to go on her continental trip. The princess would set off from Butterfly Kingdom the following month with several guards accompanying her. Alongside the guards that accompanied her, Lyre also was joined by her friends Marina Shores, Catherine Hearth, twins Sano and Jack Frost, as well as her closest friend Melanie Blight. The princess's fifth destination was Petal's Kingdom. The princess's first destination was the Petal's Kingdom. Almost immediately upon setting foot in the kingdom, the princess and her entourage were welcomed warmly by the Queen Rosa Petals and her daughter Lilith. Much to the princess's surprise and joy, the queen allowed the princess to perform as the newly constructed opera house. Much to the joy and relief of Lyre, her performance went off without a hitch and went very well, with every single seat in the opera house being filled. Lyre had been very surprised at the turnout, but when speaking to her friends about her shock, Melanie was the first to say, "Well, it's not exactly every day that people get to see the heir of a kingdom performing for a public audience." Lyre and her entourage would stay in the Petal Kingdom for 2 months longer than the princess had planned, when a large storm flooded the path to their next destination, causing it to be nearly impossible to get to the carriages. Alongside the storm, Queen Rosa Petals requested that the princess and her group stay for a bit longer so she could send word to the princess's next destination about the princess and her entourage impending arrival. The next notable event occurred in 89 AM, when in the Asher Kingdom near the port, Lyre met a boy with pink hair and green eyes. The boy's name... Snow? Okay, thank you. The boy's name was Alphonse Vita, and he was a minor noble in the Zenith Kingdom. Though he was a musical tour like the princess was, Lyre and Alphonse became relatively fast friends, and eventually in the winter of the same year, the two of them began dating on Stump Day. In 92 AM, about a month after Lyre's 20th birthday, during a musical festival in the Petals Kingdom, after performing a song in honor of Lyre called My Darling Songbird, Alphonse proposed to Lyre, who almost immediately said yes. As a result of her engagement, Lyre decided that she would begin her return to Muni. As Lyre, Alphonse, and the princess's entourage were making their months-long journey back to the Muni, the carriage carrying the princess, Alphonse, and Snow and Melanie would start falling off a cliff, though luckily they didn't fall all the way down the cliff. Luckily, the carriage was caught and those inside could be rescued. Lyre and Alphonse were mostly unharmed aside from minor injuries. Snow had a broken arm, but most tragic of all, Melanie was sadly perished during the accident. Though the princess and her group returned to Muni relatively safely after the princess was stricken with immense grief by the death of Melanie, after a month of mourning, Alphonse and Lyre married in the spring of 93 AM, after which Lyre was crowned queen. In late 94 AM, Lyre discovered that she was pregnant with her first child, and in 95 AM, Lyre gave birth, but much to the shock of the entire royal family, as well as the whole kingdom, as Lyre's firstborn was actually a son. The newborn prince was born with Lyre's hair color and Alphonse's eyes, as well as green apples on his cheeks. Lyra named him Rigel. The birth of Rigel raised the question of how the line of succession would go on, as since the first queen, the firstborn had always been a daughter. The discussion of the line of succession would persist until 9:08 a.m. after undisclosed discussion with Azalea and the MHC. It is worth noting that Herta was present after avoiding meetings for the past few years. Lyra announced that her daughters would take precedence in the line of succession over sons, meaning that after this declaration for the next year, the heir to the throne was actually Lyra's younger sister Cadence. In the winter of 100 a.m., Lyra became pregnant again, and in the summer of 101 gave birth to her heiress, whom she named Iona, Melanie Butterfly. Iona had Alphonse's hair and eyes, as well as pale yellow stars on her cheeks. It was worth noting that Iona was the first princess to have a middle name, Lyra giving her middle name in honor of her late friend Melanie. In 1:12 a.m., Lyra held the first silver bell ball for her daughter. Lyra also saw her daughter Iona make friends with a noble boy who was her age. The boy's name was Callahan Rodney. Callahan had only attended the ball because of his parents dragging him along. In 1:15 a.m., Lyra passed the wand to her daughter before a few nobles who were against Iona being the heir instead of her older brother attempted to storm in and stop the ceremony, though said nobles were quickly apprehended with the assistance of Prince Rigel. Lyra was present when her son Rigel got married the same year and would also create the first ever Song Day festival a month after for her daughter. Lyra was the one to write her daughter's song. Lyra would even perform it, the Song Day festival being the last time Lyra did any public performances. She had played with the idea of going on another musical tour after her daughter would become queen, though because of how her last tour had ended, she decided against it. Lyra would pass the throne to Iona in 1:19 a.m. and grieve the death of her mother the following month in 1:23 a.m. Lyra's first two granddaughters would be born, a girl named Dryad and from Rigel, who didn't have cheek marks, and Lumia from Iona in the winter of that year, 9 months after the marriage of Callahan Rodney. Lyra's second granddaughter from Iona was born in 1:25 a.m. Lyra would live to see Lumia inherit the wand in 1:37 a.m. before passing it away. And that was the biography of Lyra Butterfly at the musical. Next is Iona the Selfless. Iona Butterfly, the Selfless. Born 72 a.m., died 1:69 a.m., reigned 1:19 a.m. to 1:44 a.m., married to Callahan Rodney, children Lumia Butterfly and Lydia Butterfly. Princess Iona Melanie Butterfly was born to Queen Lyra Butterfly and her husband Alphonse Vita in 1:01 a.m. as her mother's second child, having an older brother named Rigel, though because of the laws of succession announced shortly after the birth of Rigel, Iona actually superseded her brother as the heir as soon as she was born. As stated in the previous biography, Iona was the first princess of Muni to have a middle name, her middle name being in honor of her mother's late friend Melanie Blight. The princess was noted to be far more sociable than her older brother. Aside from the children of her mother's friends, Iona had made friends with many of the noble families of Muni, particularly Matilda Cleaver, whom she was closest to. In 1:12 a.m., when Queen Lyra announced that the first Silver Bell Ball would be held on the day after the 11th birthday of the princess, despite the usual confidence of the princess, it was noted that Iona was worried that no one would ever pay her a passing glance, let alone a dance. Though the people loved that the kind princess, it was also well known that Prince Rigel was very popular, and that there were even groups who wished Rigel would replace Iona as the heir. When Iona confided in her friend Matilda of her fears of the upcoming event, only to be told by Matilda, "If not a soul dances with you, then I will," Iona couldn't help but smile at this, as she found comfort in knowing that her friend would be there for her regardless of the circumstances. When the Silver Bell Ball finally arrived, Iona wore a far fancier dress than any other she usually wore. Iona sat with Matilda off to the side while the nobles and the other royals danced and mingled amongst each other. About midway through the ball, Iona was approached by a noble boy who was about the same age as her, only being older by about a month. The boy was named Callahan Rodney. Callahan had blonde hair, yellowish golden eyes that caught the attention of the princess. Callahan, though, had stumbled over his words and asked the princess for a dance, to which at the behest of Matilda, Iona accepted, and after the dance, Iona and Callahan spoke for the rest of the night and were eventually joined by Matilda after a while. In 1:15 a.m., Iona gained the butterfly family wand through the ceremony was interrupted when a group of nobles who wished Rigel to be the heir instead of Iona. The princess tried to follow the guards and her brother out to stop the nobles, though she was quickly stopped by her father, who insisted she stay where she was to stay safe, as there was no telling what the nobles might try. Despite protesting, Iona eventually gave in and stayed put, though she couldn't help but worry for her father, brother, and the guards. But luckily, less than an hour after the whole fiasco began, all the nobles involved were apprehended, and Iona's father and brother, as well as the guards who ran outside, were luckily mostly unharmed, aside from some minor injuries. Later that same year, Iona was present at her brother's wedding, and about a month and a half after Rigel's wedding, Iona had first ever Song Day festival. Iona's princess song was performed by her mother Lyre. In the late summer of 1:17 a.m., Iona and Callahan began dating after months of Matilda trying to play matchmaker. It was noted that the princess was the one who did most of the talking in the relationship. 2 years later, on 1:19 a.m., Iona became queen shortly after her 18th birthday, and 4 years following her coronation, Iona married Callahan, and after a month following the wedding and a meeting with the nobles in Munich, Iona discovered she was pregnant. Later that same year, in the winter, a few months after Iona's niece was born, Iona gave birth to her heiress, whom she named Lumia. Princess Lumia was born with Callahan's hair and eyes, as well as light blue 5-petaled flowers on her cheeks. In late 1:24 a.m., Iona became pregnant again in the next year in 1:25 a.m. Iona gave birth to her second child, a girl who had golden eyes like Callahan, but brown hair, which she'd gotten from either Lyre or Callahan's father. The girl was named Lydia, and she had yellow crowns on her cheeks. In 1:27 a.m., after months of begging Rigel, who had suffered an injury that permanently affected his walking, Rigel finally stepped down as the head of the knights, though he did still train knights in his spare time. A few years later, on 1:30 a.m., Iona's father Alphonse passed away. 5 years later, on 1:35 a.m., Iona held the Silverbell Ball for her daughter Lumia. The ball's atmosphere quickly grew awkward when the Princess Lydia threw a temper tantrum when people didn't pay any attention to her sister Lumia. It got so bad that Callahan had to take Lydia out of the ballroom. In 1:37 a.m., when Lumia inherited the wand, Lydia made a scene during the ceremony by pushing her sister and trying to take the wand from her. By the time everything was over, Lumia's dress was torn and she was in tears, and Lydia had been grounded. Later that same year, Lyra passed away. In 1:38 a.m., Lumia started dating Adam Cleaver, who was the son of Matilda. Iona was more than happy to allow Lumia to join Adam on trips outside of the castle to help the charities and more. Iona knew that with Lydia worsening behavior, it was best for Lumia's mental health to have time away from Lydia. In 1:44 a.m., Iona passed the throne to Lumia, and that same day, Lumia and Adam married. Callahan made sure that Lydia was nowhere near the event. The following year, Lumia gave birth to her only child, a girl who looked nothing like either of her parents aside from the blue on her two-toned cheeks, of her two-toned eyes, who was named Supina. A rumor had started saying that the newborn princess was illegitimate. Even Lydia was upfront about it, if it was the truth. In 1:46 a.m., after returning from a year-long trip, Lydia gave birth to a daughter named Sophia, who had brown hair and blue eyes with gray clouds on her cheek marks. Despite being questioned, Lydia stuck to the story that she secretly married a man who was killed during a hunting trip shortly before she returned to Munich. In 1:50 a.m., after events that wouldn't be fully known until after Lydia and those who she'd gotten to the side her staged a coup Deata and forced Lumia off the throne and forced her to flee Muni under the threat of imprisonment or worse. Lydia didn't even allow Lumia to take Supina with her. During that whole incident, Callahan died. Iona stayed to take care of Supina despite Lydia crowning herself queen that same year and threatening Iona to acknowledge that Supina was illegitimate and that Sophie was the only legitimate heir. Iona refused despite the threats that the nobles who supported Lydia and her claims threw her away. In 1:59 a.m., after investigation by Supina and the MHC after the uproar of Lydia refusing to give Supina the wand, it ultimately culminated in Lumia being brought back to Muni and given back the throne, and Lydia being sentenced to spend the rest of her life in the dungeons. Sophia was taken by Rugel Butterfly's daughter, Deirdre, but any claim to the throne she had revoked. Finally, after everything was said and done, Supina inherited the wand almost a month after the 14th birthday, in 1:62 a.m. Iona was the first one Supina told her relationship with Rodney Aidens. Iona would live to see Supina get married and become queen in 1:69 a.m. before passing away and being buried in the palace crypts next to her mother and granddaughter. And that was the biography of Iona Butterfly, the Selfless. And that, my dear listeners, is where we're going to push pause for today. There are a couple more queens pre-done, but I don't want to run through all of them before there are more to be read. So we're going to push pause here. Thank you all for listening, and thank you, Shinkai14, for allowing us to read your stories. I hope all of you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the next Minecraft AU reading. Let me stretch. Oh, my voice is already so tired. I don't know if you could tell, but I was drinking a lot of water during this reading. Silly me. Yes, spicy soup. So, yes, once again, thank you all for listening. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you for listening. Bye, guys. Bye, 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 bye. Bye, 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 bye.